In a true Catholic tradition, I'm sure Mrs. Firmston would love to have that. Mr. Firmston would have loved to have it. I'm going to ask Lester if he can open for us in a prayer. Those of you who are Catholic, you can make the sign of the cross, and Mrs. Firmston would love it, I'm sure. Those who are not, do as you normally do. Thanks, Lester.
Okay. I'm not Catholic, but I was at a Catholic school as well. So, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Father God, thank you for the opportunity to bring us all here together. For some of us, this represents the culmination of a labor of love. For others, it's the start of a journey of reflection. Be that as it may, it's certainly something that leads us to a sense of gratitude, and we want to express that gratitude to you today. We ask you to bless this work and also everyone here, and as well as those who could not make it. Pray in your Son's name, amen.
Amen. Welcome to everybody. It's a culmination of many, many years that we reached this point, but more about that later, as a politician would say. Hopefully everybody has introduced themselves, but I think maybe to get it going, I'm going to ask you once again to say your name, for those who were our past pupils, and possibly when you started and when you were departed, or when you were expelled from the school. whichever came first.
One of these black people were expelled.
So just so that we can get a context, who was in the 1930s, who was in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, I don't think there's any 90s here. At that time you were earning the first million here. So for those who were, the past people, as the others who were not, you could just mention your name and then we move on. Let's go clockwise. Let's start with you.
Margaret Kane.
Johnny.
Putting it off.
Johnny. Story of
Johnny, you must answer your phone if it's after 6. You don't know if that's a call from the president's office. After 6, you usually call and say, I've got a vacant cabinet post.
Hopefully.
We are videoing it. You might think it's not for the SIU or for the Hawks or anybody. The idea is Ms. Firmston wants to know what took place. So we're trying to use technology to convey that to her. So next Saturday I'll go show her the video. So you have to put your brightest smile. And I guess if she walked into this room, she will name everybody on their names and say when you started and when you end. That's a challenge we're going to give for her next Saturday.
And what your misdemeanors were.
Thank you, Margaret.
Okay, Margaret Kane, now Duke. I started in 1950 and I finished my matric in 1950, and I think my matric in 60. So I came to Cape Town in 61 and I'm still here.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Audrey Donis, wife of Dave Donis.
David.
I am David Adonis. I'm originally from Mushawi. I was in a Kobo 1958, 1959, and after that I left. After the school I went to work with my dad, 2.5 years, and I came down to Cape Town. 1962 in June, I came down to Cape Town. I've been here ever since. And we've just celebrated our 50th anniversary. And of course, I met Mrs. Firmston some years ago. I don't know what year it was, by Charlie's place. And it was so nice to see her after, leaving our Copa in 1959 and come to see her in Cape Town. So nice to see her. And I was in Durban now 2 years ago, and I just missed to see her. And because I went out to my sister's 70th birthday, and I really look. When Charlie phoned me the other night to tell me, we're having a little reunion all the ex-Cobra students. I thought myself, cricket, I thought I was only, I thought we were only two. And I got to see, oh, no, some will stand. But believe me, gentlemen and a lady, it's so nice to reminisce about old times. You know, it was one of the greatest schools. And I always say, when guys, I played soccer in Cape Town for a long time. And I said, Davey, they call me Davey. Where you come from? I think I learned from one of the greatest soccer managers, South Africa. I don't think Mr. Thompson was epitomizes, that essence of I don't know how to put it. He wanted perfection.
You would clap the sense into you, right?
He demanded that perfection from all players. And, I played with some great players, with the Cardinal in Durban. I played with him to the Julian Closer, there's other guys. That time these guys were playing for South African currently 11, and they were at high school with me. And one of my greatest friends, we were at school together, Nathan Ryan. I don't know if he's familiar to anybody.
Yes, I do.
He passed away some time ago, but we were great friends at school.
Thank you, Mr. Donis. Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
going back. We're going to have a competition who was the first, and then whoever wins that competition has to jump into the pool. Let's go.
Some reflections.
Well, I'm Rodney Pepper. I'm the second Davey on what he said. I started at Little Flower in 1967 and I left in 1970, came to Cape Town, and I'm still here as market sales. On the right hand side is my wife, Lakshmi. She's happy to be in Cape Town as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's keep it going on the table, then we'll do the back benches.
Hi, it's Emmanuel Clifford, and I was in Little Flower at the late 50s and moving into the early 60s around there. I don't remember my history right now, my years is way, I'm 77, 78 now. So I mean, it's a long time. So history is really way behind me, and I don't really remember completely. But I know I had a great time there, being educated there. We lived in those dormitories where Mr. Firmson and Mrs. Firmson were in charge, and they would wake us up in the morning, get up, it's time for, get ready to go to service. How many times do we go to service in the morning? Monday, Tuesday, we didn't go on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday we skipped, and of course Sunday was it. Early in the morning, line up, get ready to go to church, and from there, after church, obviously we'd end up maybe in the gardens, quickly work, and then from there to school. But
I hope
anyway,
you still attend church. I mean, full package or one.
I've got plenty of church. Yes, I mean that's the most important thing. That's why I went to Little Flower, because I mean my journey is way ahead. It's amazing. All right.
I'm Lovell Fernandez. At some point I was called Lovewell, but it was a mistake. I went to LFS in 1963 and I finished off in 1967.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Cedric Nunn. I think I'm a large lamaki around this table. I may look one of the older, but I assure you, I'm a 70s kid in LFS. I started in 70. I wasn't there long. I had a brother that did all his schooling there from grade what we call class 1 to matric. But I just spent 3 years there from 73 from 70 to 73.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Let's go.
Yeah, Quentin Parrott. I was in Ikopo from 1960 to 62. Mrs. Firmson used to wake me up to be an altar server. I used to be an altar server, and she'd wake me up at some ridiculous hour, like 4:30 in the morning, because the visiting priests would have to go to the airport, so they would have to say mass first. And I was one of those people that would wake up at that time of the morning to go and serve mass. There's nothing, no great stories I can tell, except that I think that Mrs. Firmston and Mr. Firmston were fantastic people that had a lot of care for us.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is John Bidell. I was there 1980 to 1983 at the law. So we the one of the last ones. It's actually a very proud moment for me because I was the last head prefect that Mistress ordained before she retired.
Okay.
1983.
All right.
So, I don't actually know who was the first, but I was the
We'll get to it.
Emmanuel was the prefect.
Yeah. I'm Bernard Hank. I'm from the era, I was there in the 60s, late 60s, about 65 to 71. Just before Rodney, so that's the year I was there. I was the resident tonsorial artist, as they called me then. The barber used to sit on the logs there and cut everybody's hair. That was my job on a Saturday. We all had chores to do, others were scrubbing the floor, and I took the easier way out. I cut the hair, so that was my job.
There we go. Well, you can see that if you have to open a business again, you're not going to get clients from many of us here.
For sure. There's a bygone era.
I'm Charles Gould. Arrived at the LFS 1963, direct from a fantastic holiday in South America, plunged into this Little Flower School. And I was there right up to 1970. Officially, I had prefect for 2 years, unofficial for 3 years. Tried to change the school, and I think I did something good by changing that school a little bit to what it was after I left. From what it was, you old guys know what it was. We had no soccer field. We had to go right out the top, play football there. You should know that. So built swimming pools. We got the girls to actually come and watch us playing football, which the nuns never ever wanted to allow. Nice to do that. It's a good era. I miss that. I think they actually asked me to come back a couple of years and I refused. I'm ever sorry I didn't do that. I should have done that for our people. They need the discipline, and our youngsters do need it.
Thanks, Charlie. I'm Winston Middleton. I was there from 68 and 71. My mother decided to send me to Little Flower because she had to leave Pietermaritzburg to come and do a nursing course at Tygerberg Hospital. And she was worried about her children. And she said, okay, my brother and I must go to Little Flower. My sister, somebody else will sort her out. And my brother decided to fail that grade standard 7 so that he doesn't go there. I passed, and so I had to go there. I have no regrets today. Thanks, guys. And this is, well, Llewellyn. Llewellyn will also give his reflections. Llewellyn was part of the editing and the layout of the book, but he will say more about that. I want to give a very brief overview of the journey about this particular book. Apparently, the idea arose around about 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. Ms. Firmston had this idea when she was relocated to Pietermaritzburg to write a book. She chatted with Bernard Natley about this, and they spent a few years mulling over, what model are they going to bring into this book of stories. Bernard, who was a copywriter at the Natal Witness, that was a local newspaper in Pietermaritzburg, over those years he had spent hours with Mrs. Firmston, and she was talking about her experiences, going back from possibly before he was born to when she retired. And Bernard was of the opinion that the book must be about her and the role she played at the school. And he spent a few years trying to convince her into that path. And she spent the same number of years telling Bernard it's not to be. That the book is going to be about the boys and the girls at the school. And he says, Miss Ferguson, but how, you know, the stories that you're talking, a lot of it revolves around yourself and Mr. Firmstone and the boys' hostel, the girls' hostel, and that. She says, no, the book is not. So they spent a few years battling with that tension of how is this book going to look? What shape is this book going to take? Eventually, Bernard gave up. He said, how do you want it? She said, no, this is how I want it. I'm going to ask all the past pupils to write their stories. They must send their stories to her. They're going to put it together in a book, untouched, virgin-like as it arrives at her, and the book must be published. So Bernard had no option but to move on this road. So in about 2011, 2012, they started this. They sent out a call. Mrs. Firmstone phoned people, like she literally got on the phone and phoned people in Australia, and New Zealand, and Canada, and the US, and in South Africa. And anybody who phoned her, she told them about this book, that she intends writing. Please send me your stories. The stories started rolling in over a 3-year period. Many came via email, because at that time, Mrs. Firmstone wasn't technologically challenged. She had a laptop. So many stories came via email. Others came by post, handwritten, maybe for those who were technologically challenged. Others wanted to tell these stories, no, just write something down. So at that point in time, they had about 90 stories from pupils across the world. Right? Then the brief was to put it together. At that point in time, and this is round about 2016, 2015, 2016, both Bernard and Mrs. Firmstone fell very ill. Bernard discovered that he had cancer, and he went through a treatment of 2 to 3 years, and he would say, sometimes in a jovial way, he started dying. And he had no energy to do anything with the pen, or with the typewriter, or with the computer then. Ms. Firmstone also took a bad turn, and they abandoned the book for about 2 years. It just stood there. Now, my body used to go, since I think 2013, on an annual trip to Pietermaritzburg, because the body had wanted to run in the Comrades Marathon. You know that silly race between Durban and Maritzburg, you run for 12 hours, then you can drive for 45 minutes. I used to take my body up there from about 2013, and I'd run the race, finish it, sometimes not finish it, sometimes land in hospital. And last year I went to her because I finished it. It was the uprun from Durban to Maritzburg. I finished it after I came out of hospital. I went to her before I left. I said, Ms. Firmstone, how's the book? Can I leave my deposit here? No, Winston, the book has died. It's finished. They've given up. She's sick. Bernard, I went to Bernard. Bernard was not on a good wicket. And she said, Winston, can you write this book? I said, Mrs. Winston. The most I've written up to that point was a thesis. And that's not the same thing, because the thesis you write, it gets passed, you put it on the shelf, and you never read it again. Nobody's going to read it after that. I don't know about this thing. And she begged and begged and begged. And I said, Ms. Firmstone, okay, I'll go and see what I can do. I don't know. I don't know where I'll start. I'll go and see what I can do. And then I was introduced. When I got back to campus, and I asked around and that, and this gentleman, my right, Lester, came to me, and I just sat him down and said, hey man, I've got this thing, and this electronic and handwritten pages here. How can I go about this thing? He says, man, phone this guy and speak to him. I said, but what's his claim to fame? He said, phone him, speak to him. So I went to Google, like the younger people, my students sitting here. You ask them anything, they say, wait a second, out comes the phone, Google. Any little thing, Google. If they went there, 1 + 1, you ask Google, 1 + 1. And I phoned this gentleman here, Llewellyn. I said, Llewellyn, can I chat with you about this book and that? Llewellyn came in a few days, and I sat him down and said, this is what I've got. And Llewellyn said, well, you know what this thing is about? It's a legacy project. Because you're writing about an institution, in this case a school. It's about the stories of the past pupils. You're putting Mrs. Ferguson's story to it. It's a legacy project. And I said, well, it looks like we're onto something. I reported back to my principals in Maritzburg, Ms. Ferguson. I said, well, I've got somebody who could take us on this journey. And after months of chatting and chatting, then I went to Ms. Ferguson and said, Ms. Ferguson, you know what, I think it's going to cost us a lot of money. Where is the money going to come from? I said, Winston, what money? Just write the book. I said, no, it's not like that. And I said, Ms. Ferguson, you know, I've got an idea. Why don't we do an e-book? She said, what is this thing? I said, what we do? We type up all the stuff, we put it into a Microsoft Word, and we get somebody to do it like a book, like the Kindle book. And it's done. The cost will be minimal. There's no printing costs and all that. She said, no, she doesn't know about this e-book thing. She wants a hard copy book. And my folks said, but where's the money going to come from? She says, don't worry. She's going to phone around. I said, okay, Ms. Ferguson, I'm not a good fundraiser. I haven't raised money. I've given more money than I've ever raised. I don't know, you know. And she said, no, she'll phone. She knows of past pupils who have made you know, money in their life and have possibly got the resources. Ms. Ferguson, I leave that to you. Please don't phone me and ask me how much to do it. I'm not good at that work. She was on the phone, and after a few calls, she said, Winston, please phone Margie Heslop. I said, what about Ms. Ferguson? No, speak to her. I said, speak to her about what? About funding for the layout of the book. I said, hi, Ms. Ferguson, you must ask, because you know, and I mentioned this to her, I said, Ms. Ferguson, you are like Mr. Mandela. You know, apparently the story goes that when you were still president, and the CEO's secretary of some company got a call from the president's office. And she said, no, the CEO is not here, I'll get him to call you. They knew if Mr. Mandela called, the first thing that the CEO will do is go to his chief financial officer and say, hey, how much money have you got? I'm expecting a call from the president. So they'll work out with the chief financial officer, how much money can we give? Then he'll call, and Mr. Mandela will, he didn't ask for 1,000 rand. He says, I need 1 million rand because I want to build a school here. And the CEO said, okay, yes, that's possible. I think it is. Yes, I'll give it to you. I said, Mr. Ferguson, if I ask the people, I don't know them. What are they going to say to me? They're going to say no, because we're on that side of the line. You ask them. They won't say no to you. So she had to go back. Because I said, no, I can't do that. It was possibly the first time I said no to her. Then she phoned. And she phoned Margie. She says, Margie, I need money to get this book going. And then she phoned me back. She says, Winston, phone Margie. But Ms. Ferguson, have you phoned Margie? Yes, she's phoned. I said, okay, now it's fine. Then I can follow up with Margie and explain what it is about. Margie said, no, fine. Ms. Ferguson has called me. She's explained everything to me. And that is where the journey of the book started. And we started putting together. That was June 2017. Mr. Ferguson was stunned by the responses, by the number of responses. And the responses varied, and when you buy the book this evening, you're going to see all the stories that come out, the khaki cock, the sampan beans, and all that. However, from the journey of the writing side, let me assure everybody, because there's been a little flack about the book too, but you know, because we're working with humans, that's fine. There's been no sliding scale about the contributions that have been made. There's no sliding scale of what was right or wrong, good or bad, no degrees of preference. The decision of what to include laid on the narrow shoulders of the editors. And you can whoop us for that. We won't feel much pain because our shoulders are narrow. However, there's not much you can do now because, as Bernard said, you know, we are either grey or there is no hair. So we're not going to lose any hair in that process. Mrs. Ferguson, diligently as she did, when she used to get the submissions, somebody used to load it on a flash drive, and she will take it to a coffee shop in the mall down the road where the home is, and they'll make copies for her. Mrs. Ferguson would walk from the home to the mall, make the copies, and come back. As she gets it, that was her trip, virtually a weekly trip to do that. One day, Bernard came there with his car, and Ms. Ferguson says, no, I'm just going to make copies at the copy shop. So he said, come, I'm going to the mall to, let's go, I'll take you down there. So she went there, and she had a whole pile of stories. She made the copies. Bernard said, okay, give me the copies. He put it in his car. She went shopping, and we went shopping. When they came back to the car park, Bernard's car disappeared. And in that car was these copies and was his laptop. So what went missing was the original stories of that group in that time period that Ms. Fernstone received, and all the editing that he was doing and typing up the stories on the laptop. He actually put an article in the Natal Witness pleading with the person, I don't want the car back, you can keep it, but please bring my laptop back and those papers that were in the car. Unfortunately, it didn't yield any response. Why do I tell you the story? Because it looks as if there were several stories that disappeared. Those that were on his laptop and he had only copies, and those hard copies that Mrs. Fons made copies of. And people will be disappointed when they see the book and they find their stories are not there. But what we try to do, we use the LFS Past Pupils Facebook, and we advertise. I wrote a story about these stories that went missing. Please, I gave them a list of those that we had. I said, if you submitted, please submit it. Submissions are still open. We actually got a few, but I think there are several that we didn't get, or people were not on the Facebook group. Ms. Thompson told me one thing, that funding will follow the project. And she said, go in faith, it will come right. Then I sat with Ms. Ferguson. Ms. Ferguson, right, tell me, what do you want out of this thing? She said, Winston, you take those stories, put it in the book, untouched. No editing, nothing. But by then I'd read through it. I said, Ms. Ferguson, I always boast to people that I'm the best English teacher in the country. I can't put my name to some of these stories. It looks like they weren't your pupil. They must have been taught by the German nuns or something. But English is a challenge for some of them. Or they were Afrikaans speaking or something, but you can't put it just like this. You know, Winston, the story must go just the boys and girls. I said, Ms. Winston, it can't go like that. Then you can't publish the book. You can't put your name to this. You were the best English teacher in the country. You can't. And I had to convince her that there had to be some editing done to these stories. And I explained the brief to Llewellyn. And Llewellyn came with the story, what we will do is light editing. Is that right? And also he said, the other thing that he coined, he said, we will keep the voice of the story. I thought, yeah, that's it. Onto the phone, Ms. Ferguson. I phoned her at 7:45. She finishes her supper. She says her prayers and she's bed. I know she's in bed on 5:07. So there's two conditions I'll do this book. Number one, we're going to do light editing. Number two, we're going to keep the voice. I don't know if she understood that, but she said it's fine. I said okay, it's fine. Then we proceeded. We proceeded from July 2017, Llewellyn, with the Llewellyn. Everybody who contributed to the book, we are deeply appreciative of their effort. However, I must also say, and you'll see in the book, some dug deeply into the narrative, into the story, into the experience. Others, like they woke up in the morning and wrote something down. You know, like quick, and we didn't eliminate any stories. However, I mean, I must say too, and I must declare, I've got a legal practitioner there who will stand by my side if I run into trouble. Where the stories, Remember, the stories was to leave a legacy project of the experiences of what happened when you were there, what contributed to your growth and development. There were some stories that were school bashing. You know, we edited that information out because we thought the book is not about that. However, I must say that yes, not everybody has a good story to tell about Little Flower. There's some who found it oppressive. Some found the teachers, to put it into current language, like hard disciplinarians for no apparent reason. And some who hated, quote unquote, the German nuns. Or some of them, sorry, some of them. And some pupils took a bashing at them. And we decided to be using, what is this thing they call a license?
Editorial license.
We edited it out. We said, that's, we can write another, I'm sure, just as we present the book now, we can write another book about the horror stories. But that's for another day. Anybody wants to take up that project of writing on the horror story? Because then it'll be a balanced picture. Concord will chuck this book out. They say, no, it's not a fair reflection. They can write that. They're free to do it because some people didn't have good stories to tell. However, I must make the submission, Prof. Fernandez. Going through the stories, and even the stories of the pupils who, as part of their story, took a bash at the school and the teachers and the hospital and the nuns and all that. There was a common thread that ran through these stories. They didn't exit the school worse off. They had bad experiences, yes, just like any situation in life, at work, at school, at wherever. You have bad situations at certain times. But nobody ever said, I exited the school worse off. They'll always acknowledge of where they are now, and they reflect back and say, were it not for my Little Flower experience, I possibly wouldn't be here now. And I think that was a golden thread. That I think was a beautiful narrative that ran through the schools, through the stories. While initially, Mrs. Ferguson was almost the center of the book, she didn't want to write anything. We had to say, there cannot be a book without your story. Then it's useless. It becomes notes to your lover or something like that. It's of little value. You as Mrs. Firmstone have to be part of the story. And because Bernard said that, hey, she's got so many stories to tell that we don't even know about, he said, you have to write up something. So Bernard would sit with her. He would record her, and then he would go and type up, transcribe what she was saying. You'll see that the book is about 466 pages. About a fifth of the book focus on Mrs. Firmstone in particular, and Mr. Firmstone in general. So we were able to push her to a point that a reasonable portion of the book is about, not about her, but the role that she played at the school. Because without her, I don't know if LFS would have reached that height. It's up for grabs, it's up for judgment. So a fifth of the book focuses on her experiences, and I can tell you, I will brush through some parts of the book later. It's a remarkable story. It's a remarkable story. And the other 4/5, it's about the submissions of the past pupils. However, it's so intertwined as a school community. The pupils, the parents of the pupils, the families of the pupils, the teachers, the nuns, the priests, the local Ikopo community, the workers, the support services staff at the school. It's intertwined, it's interwoven in the school. And it comes out in the stories. And hopefully that you pick that out as well. In closing, what relevance does this book have? I don't know. Mrs. Vance would say, it's a book about the boys and the girls. However, after Prof. Jansen wrote the foreword for the book, I won't let you into it now, I'll touch on it in the next part. You know, Prof. Jansen saw the deepness of those stories, and I'll allude to that. So somehow, while it's just stories about girls and boys, hopefully when you read Prof. Jansen's foreword, you'll see of what value that book could have to South African society. I think, let me stop there now. I'm going to ask Llewellyn, but maybe let's take a break, come help yourself, come around, come help yourself. Then I'm going to ask Llewellyn, as the editor, the layout, to give his reflections about it. Why don't we do that? Because I want to, what we arranged, Peter Ferguson and his wife are in Maritzburg, and we arranged that we're going to try and do a Skype session with Mrs. Ferguson.
Sorry, can I jump in here? Yeah, she found there's a power failure in the marriage. Hence they were unable to Skype with it.
I thought the IP just had to be
The
next one.
Okay, call it back and ask, can we do a WhatsApp
Conference
call? But not now. Let's take a little break.
Okay.
And then, but just for the meantime, are they still there with her? Can we do a WhatsApp call at least?
Okay.
Okay. Help yourself, recharge your glass and your plate, and then Llewellyn will give us his reflections about the book and his involvement in it. Thanks, guys.
Much of what Winston has said overlaps with a few points that I have made, so I shan't repeat some of the stories or the insights that he's given. Lester led me to this work with Winston. But I need to give a little bit of a background that might give you additional perspective to why I think it fell to me, so that it wasn't just a coincidence that I happened to have a postgraduate colleague that happens to be working with Winston. I was born in Kokstad. My father was a teacher in Kokstad and in Queenstown, and eventually the R in Bowwood West. Sadly, he passed away at the age of 49, but he was a phenomenal educator. I've got photographs of myself playing in the snow with my father, you know. So when I told him that I was born in Kokstad, he thought it was just a phenomenal and amazing coincidence. I don't know if you remember when I was born here. So, and it may very well be that Mr. or Mrs. Winston knew my father. Jagels, but Yichels, if that rings a bell. Queenstown, Uitenhage, Graaff-Reinet. My father was the first UCT graduate in the 50s from the Graaff-Reinet area. And then Queenstown and Kokstad, that's where all of us were born, including Dimitri Jagels that many of you might know as my eldest brother. So that's the history for me. So for me, it felt more than just a legacy project. This is some work that I'm doing. I felt a special connection with it, and the narratives, the stories. And for me, the whole, the book itself, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You know, you can look at a short story that's one paragraph. You can look at one that spreads across 10 pages, but they're all contributing to that overall feel of it's the story of Little Flower School. But without Mrs. Fernstone, I feel she's central to the narrative. That she's the glue that holds everything together in the story. So the role I had to play was to take all of these disparate parts and bring them together into some sort of cohesive whole that
that speaks, that communicates. And so that became a question of something that we call in publishing, in writing, in academia, semiotics, which is sort of how are things represented? You know, how they symbolize? How are we going to play? Where's Mrs. Firmstone's story going to be? At the beginning, in the middle, at the end? How long is it going to be? What are we going to do about the short stories? What are we going to do about all the stories that need all of this editing? And the first proof that I presented to Winston, he was horrified. He's like, but there are all these errors in here, you know, the editing. I said, no, that comes later. And he had reservations about that, but we fixed that at the end because that wasn't my concern, because I knew that I'd be able to retain the voice. I was more concerned about the look and feel. So when you hold it in your hand and you flip through, what are you actually seeing? So the order, in alphabetical order of the stories, Mrs. Firmstone at the beginning. And we were left with the gaps, you know, the short stories, the pages with gaps. And I said to him, there needs to be a visual component because there's a textual history, but there's also a visual history. And as when a picture tells 1,000 words, it evokes that history. When you look at a picture of the building of Little Flower School, or of someone playing tennis, or whatever they're doing, that in of itself is an integral part of the story. So I made a little note here about that history, or writing history, is fiendishly difficult. Precisely for the reasons that Winston mentioned. What do you leave in and what do you leave out? So it becomes a challenge of inclusion and of exclusion. And I don't mean by that those who didn't submit stories. But you know, how do you pare things down? How do you place things? What are the pictures that we are putting in? What about the ones that are not going to go in? Because there's no space for them. And so that then became an exercise of saying, okay, let's put these pictures here. And Winston ordered them, put them in this order. And there was a reason for that, because he understood that visual history and had a feel for that. And so the history then becomes a question of emphasis and nuance, depending upon what you're actually putting into the book. And the editing was critical in the sense that I had to retain the voice and the essence of what the person is saying while I'm fixing the errors of spelling and of grammar. So that I couldn't necessarily change an overly long sentence and say this needs to be in 2 sentences, which I would have done if it were any other book. I had to work with that and just change enough to fix those errors so that the voice of the person is still retained. So in the end, for me, it became more than just the financial compensation for my professional skills. It became also something beyond that for me. A little indefinable, but it has a lot to do with Mrs. Firmstone as an educator, as a mother. I look after my mother. She's 85, she has dementia. So, and Winston was saying that when she got the first copy of the proof, how emotional she was, and that she's on her last leg, she's not well at the moment. So it became sort of a race to the finish line for me, completing this as quickly as possible. But also with a greater scare and with great a sense of love and affinity for the person, for the woman that is central to the narrative, and Mr. Firmstone. So I want to thank you, Winston, for giving me the opportunity to work with the project. And the word project sounds very clinical. I don't like the word. I think this narrative, this story, this amalgamation, conglomeration, that this whole that is greater than the sum of the parts. The story is alive. History is alive. In other words, we take history and we reimagine history, and this is a reimagining of the history of the school. Because not every story is in there. This is a particular kind of reimagining that is very unique. If someone else did this work, or if it wasn't Winston and somebody else took, it might be a completely different kind of historical reflection and reimagining. So I'm glad that I played a role, and I want to thank you for the opportunity, and to all of those that have contributed their stories, both big and small. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we're going to use, no, you can sit there, we're going to try and make technology work for us.
It's not everywhere that they cater for you, so you must check yourself as being privileged.
Right. I'm going to try and take you through a journey of the actual book. Give you little snippets of what you could expect in the book when you receive it. This was our original design of the cover. Because Bernard and I thought, Mrs. Swimson doesn't need the center of the book. Let's put it on the cover. When she saw it, she was angry. She said, "You take my picture off." They said, Mrs. Swimson, the story. She said, "Take my picture off. I told you the book is not about me. It's about the boys and girls. This boys and girls thing, it's stuck in her mind." So quickly, chops, it's off. Gone. This is what we eventually came up with. We got the original badge. The only person who seemed to have that original badge was Eileen. She had one in Germany. We now asked her in marriage fiction, "No, I'll send it to you." So we got that original badge. And we photoshopped it in and cleaned it up. We decided that we're going to put, there are 5 authors to the book. We decided we'll make Mrs. Firmstone what they call the chief author, even though she didn't want it like that. Right? And the others will be co-authors. And when you're writing a book, apparently there's a war about whose name appears first. Whose name appears first is damn important. Whose name appears last is there for a reason. Money doesn't matter, put the alphabetical order. So we decided, let's put her name on the front cover. And we thought, every institution, organization, there's one picture by which you will remember that place. If you look at Cape Town, Table Mountain, cable car. If you look at UCT, Wits is the jammy stairs. UCT, the jammy stairs. Wits is that the plaza in the front. So every institution has got that. UWC is the main hall. And we thought the one building that people will know is the entrance to the girls' hostel. Because, if I remember correctly, you had to drive up there and then turn right to go to the school.
Yes, right.
So we said, that is the one picture that everybody will know. So we decided, the badge, the picture, Mrs. Firmstone's name, there we go. Okay.
Go into my bedroom.
Yeah.
Now I want to... Then I asked Mrs. Firmstone, we need a forward for the book. She wants to get this thing going, man. Don't be so technical about it. I said, no, somebody must summarize the book or whatever. I said, who would you like to, Mrs. F to Prof. J. Who would you like to write the forward? There's only one name that popped up in my mind. She said Prof. Jansen. Jonathan Jansen, former rector of Free State, and the harsh critic of the South African government, and especially on education. Open it on the desktop. Mrs. Ferguson will. Now, Mrs. Ferguson's got an axe to grind with Prof. Jansen. When she had this idea about the book and that, she had called him and she told him about this idea. But how she called him, I had to call Prof. Jansen's secretary, when you're still rector at Free State. He said, Mrs. Ferguson wants you to speak to him. What about it? No, about a book. And eventually, when Prof. Jansen came back, the secretary gave the message and he phoned Mrs. Ferguson. Oh, hello, Mrs. Ferguson, that and that and that. Mrs. Ferguson told her about this book and that. And he gave her thoughts about his, oh, when I'm in Maritzburg, I'm going to come and visit you and what have you. So when I asked, who do you want to have the forward, she said, Prof. Jansen. I said, Ms. Firmstone, if I go to Prof. Jansen, he's going to say no. You're the Mandela. You ask him. She said, but how can I ask him? I said, I took out my phone when I was acting young. I took out my phone and said, Ms. Firmstone, here's a video camera. You ask him, I'll video it, and I will email it to him. And I'll ask him. And this is her words to him.
Dear Professor Jansen, from what I have read about you, subsequently spoken to you, I am now so impressed by all I know that I am asking you sincerely to write a foreword to a book which we have just produced on Little Flower School, Ikopo.
So let me skip through the book from, I think I need to quote some of Prof. Jansen's words in his foreword, and you're going to read it. He titled the foreword, A Tribute to an Iconic South African School and its Remarkable Leaders. I was not going to write yet another foreword for somebody else's book. It takes up so much of my time in a crowded workday, since I have to read and assess manuscripts for new books in order to write something sensible. And I'm also busy with my own assignments, including my own academic books. Writing a foreword for strangers was not going to happen. So I scanned the email which I had sent to him. And my inclination was to say no, until a video message came through with the voice of a warm, gracious, and dignified older woman asking me to do exactly that, to write a foreword for a book on one of South Africa's most prestigious schools. How could I possibly say no? And then he penned the forwards, and he continued. You know, I don't want to. He spoke about the book that Sister Dioda and Mr. Green Thompson, Mr. GT wrote on the biology. He actually used it when he was in matric. When the results used to come out and were published, him and his family, when they get the results, one of the first schools they look for the results is Little Flower School, Ikopo, to check the matric results. So Little Flower School, Ikopo was always in his mind about it, and then came this request. That was where the school started, Letrap. Those were some of the first pupils there. Sister Nuncia, who, when she came as principal, what Prof. Jansen said is that any school in South Africa can succeed. However, you need a school that has got strong, focused leadership, and you've got dedicated and skilled teachers. And regardless of the socioeconomic state of that school, it will succeed. That's what he firmly believes in. And he said, Little Flower School wasn't imbued with major resources. However, they produce the best of the best, and their products are found across the world. And that's his words. I want to quote, in a nutshell, Little Flower set a rigorous standard for academic excellence, and how we miss that today in most of our public schools. We've got the table of contents. The book is divided, well and alluded to, into two parts. One is what we call Mrs. Firmstone's story and some of the contextual stories about the school and about people and the school community. That's part one. That's at 1/5. And the second part is the pupils a story. So that's how we structured the book. The class of 1953, the first matric class. And these pictures appear in the book. So you don't have to be like the young people at university when they should put something, out come the cell phones taking pictures of it. The pictures all appear. Those are the first, some of the names of the first girls who reached matric in 1953. Now, what is striking, ladies? Look at the dress, look at the posture, and particularly look at those arms and those hands. If they stood any other way, the nuns would have got to them. That you can only do in 1953 in a Catholic school. In the first part, we take Mrs. Ferguson's story was one long story of about 70 pages. No paragraphs, no numbering, nothing. So we took all those stories, and it was like just pieces put together. We took all those stories and trying to put it into a sequence of her life. That's what we tried to do. When you read her story can cover a book. Mrs. Ferguson was sent by her parents. They stayed in Ikopo, the village. She was sent by her parents to Little Flower in class 1. Her elder sister was there. Mrs. Firmstone told the nuns that she wanted to sleep, when they was taken to the dormitory, the hostel, she wanted to sleep in the same bed as her sister. The nuns said no ways. That night, Mrs. Firmstone took her rag doll and a few other things and walked out of the hostel and started walking to the village. She said, this is not for me. She started walking. And the nun who was in charge of the hostel sent 2 boys, and the names of the boys are listed in here, to go after her. She walked, I think it's about 2.5 miles
It's about, yes, up the hill, yeah.
to the village. She got home about 7 o'clock in the evening, and she said, I'm back, I'm not going there. Her mother didn't say a word. Now, this is where the discipline and the different ways of parenting come in. Mother didn't say a word. The boys spoke to her mother, and then they walked back to the hostel. The Sunday, in the ox wagon, Svenson and her parents and they went to church. After church, the parents took her and dumped her back at the hostel and said, that is where you're going to stay. And that is where she stayed in her schooling. She was there in primary school, and she came to JC. And Mrs. Firmstone and her older sister were academically excellent pupils. They were at the top of the range. The inspectors now, inspector then and today is different. You know, they'd go to the books and all that. They saw that these sisters were performing. The inspectors would decide who goes to matric, you know, beyond JC. The inspector told the principal that he will sponsor Mrs. Firmson's eldest sister to matric and even to university. Even if it means overseas university, he will sponsor that. When the eldest sister got wind of this, she never returned that year. She never returned to school. She met somebody, married that person. When the principal came the following year, he said, where is the sister? The principal said, the sister's left the school, and he was most disappointed. He went through the list and he saw Elizabeth, what was her maiden name? Dupree. Yeah, Elizabeth Dupree there. He said, okay, let her go to matric. Then World War II broke out. Several of the teachers were conscripted into the army and sent to North Africa, you know, with the South African forces. The principal asked Mrs. Ferguson, can you teach for us? She was 14 years old at that time. And she started teaching class 1 and class 2. 14-year-old who was still a pupil at the school. And she started teaching there.
No shoes on. Teach how.
Then the principal put her up into standard 1 and 2. Then put it up into JC. While she was still a pupil in standard after JC,
Nine.
she was still a pupil and she was teaching as well. She completed a matric in that way. Little Flower started in an Ain Shanty, as I showed on 31st of January 1923. Let me come to some of her tidbits. At the end of 1 year, Mrs. Ferguson, being the teacher, was asked by the principal to take the Johannesburg girl, to accompany the Johannesburg girls back to Johannesburg on the train, because they were complaining about the bedding boys that were interfering with her and all that. I don't know, is this a Justin thing? I don't know why she had to watch the girls. And she went up there, she was coming back with the train, and she stopped off in Newcastle. She had family in Newcastle. And they had lunch, because then she was going to jump in the train, go to Maritzburg, and I think take the red maroon bus, it's the railway bus back or something like that. Somehow, on this particular Sunday, there walks in this gentleman who was a farmer in the area. And he started playing his guitar and all that. And somehow the eyes were attracted to one another. And you know, instead of going home the following day, she spent the whole weekend at this relative's farm. And who was this person? Mr. Firmstone. He took Miss Firmstone and her sister to a shop somewhere in Newcastle. And then the following day, he invited to take Mrs. Firmstone to bicycle. But Miss Firmstone wanted to go with her sister. And Miss Firmstone wasn't happy with this thing. He wasn't eyeing the sister, he was eyeing her. And he took her to Maritzburg, to bicycle and then back. I said, how can you travel so far just for a bicycle? Remember, those days there were no bicycles for so-called the non-whites. And then she got married. She married. Mr. Firmstone was a farmer. He came to visit at the school. No, before they got married, he came to visit her at the school, because now she was the boarding mistress. She had finished studying teaching. She was the boarding mistress. Well, came to visit, went to church there, and somehow it looks like the nuns were matchmaking this whole thing as well. And the nuns took a liking to Mr. Ferguson, and they asked him, "Wouldn't you like to be the boarding master here?" No, but I'm a farmer there. Blah blah blah. The end of the long short of it, they eventually got married. And Mr. Firmstone agreed on the coaxing of the principal to be the boarding master. And Mrs. Firmstone was the boarding mistress of the girls' hostel at that time. For I think 1 or 2 years after their marriage. This is Eileen and Peter. You'll see that the pictures, now these pictures were pixelated when we were putting it on the PowerPoint. The pictures we scanned mostly from the school magazines. And the magazines that we got from Mrs. Firmstone was in the late 60s and the 70s. Those are the pics we used. Those are the only pics we had. So the pics are not too good. They're all black and white. And I think the idea with Llewellyn thing is that the black and white pictures will blend in the whole book. And that's why we made it a white cover too, because it's an old story instead of having all the bright pictures into it. That's Eileen and Peter. They were born at Little Flower School. Bishop Napier, he played a critical and pivotal role in the development of the school, especially from the church's side. Any story about the school cannot be as complete if you don't talk about soccer and if you don't talk about the Wolves and the Cubs. Now what we did in trying to select the pictures is that we had to work with what we've got. That's the first thing. So it was a certain time period of pictures that we had. What we decided to do is to try and select pictures that have as many pupils in it as possible so they can start identifying themselves rather than single pictures of people. So that is what we did. And we tried to locate the picture where reference was made to that, not that specific picture, but that activity or event of the school. And we located in that in that spot of the story. Some other pictures we just put there has no relevance to that particular story of the pupil. Because we ended up, in terms of the layout, with large white spaces on. So wool's features, I mean, there's no discussion about little flower if you don't talk about wools and colours. Mrs. First,
Toch een huisje, hè, is het?
Ja, mooi.
Hi, Winston.
wait, let's just take a commercial break. Hello, Uli.
Hi, Winston.
Hello, Uli.
Hello, Winston.
Yes, Peter.
My dear mum.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Now, better. My dear mum, I was in her room just now, and she was lying there and looked terrible. So she was not even able to go to the telephone and speak on the phone, because that was the idea I had, because Wi-Fi in her old age home does not work, although they had promised me it would work. And Wi-Fi here where we are, in our premises, the current had gone at 6 o'clock. And the current has just come back now.
Hippie hooray.
Yeah. So that's real, terrible, bad luck. But my mum is so extremely exhausted and tired that she said she didn't even want to speak to me. And you know, when Mrs. Firmstone does not speak, then she's really finished.
Okay, I grant it to you. I grant it to you. However,
so we are so sorry, because actually we had tried the connection, we had done everything perfectly actually, and we had planned then, because Wi-Fi was not working in the old age home where she is, we had planned to bring her here to us, to our premises, but then here light went off at 6 and has just come on now shortly after 8.
Hello Peter, Quentin here. Well,
Hello
Quentin.
Hi Uli.
How you doing?
Hello Quentin, very nice to see you after such a long time. Remember 2010 we were with you?
Yeah, of course yes.
okay.
8 years.
Peter, thanks very much for that. We are into it. We're enjoying ourselves. We're having fun. What I'm going to ask anybody who remembers you, they could come in front of the computer and they can say hi to you and that. But we appreciate your efforts. So anybody who knows,
you can believe me. We've been trying our very best, but it just did not work.
I agree. What we're going to ask you, however, this is the condition. Those who know you are going to come here, but you have to say who they are.
I remember her very well. She was a nurse.
What's her name?
Her name was Margaret Kane. I remember her very well indeed.
Your mother's other daughter. Have you forgotten?
Yes. And in addition, she's looking younger than ever.
The next one.
And next one, let me have a look now. Goodness me. I know this face so very well, but I can't. Wait, I know it. Charlie.
Remember the accident. Remember the accident with the
Charlie
Jaguar.
Gould.
Yes.
Are you Charlie Gould?
Yes.
I recognize it, but I first had to concentrate very much. Hello, Charlie. So lovely to see you again.
No problem.
Okay, I'll
See you next week.
Oh, you.
I guess you won't know me.
Wait. Now let me wait. I know this face too so very well.
Kom, doe ons gleich nochmal.
Goodness me. I can't remember your name.
Okay, let's say the first name.
Mike?
Henk?
Henk.
Joburg?
Joburg?
Yes,
Henk?
I knew you came from Joburg, but what
Bernard Henk? Bernard Henk?
Bernard Henk.
Bernard? Yeah, that's right, but somehow... Hello. That's my son.
Oh, hello.
That's his son.
That's my son. He also he had his birthday on the same day that my mother had her birthday.
Oh, Lovely one. Right, here comes the next one. Here's the next one, Peter.
Rodney Pepper, my friend. We went to Wits University together for some time.
Right. So good to see
And
you
look,
again.
this is my son, Max.
Hi. Hello, Max. Hello, Max.
Hello, Rodney.
Good to see you.
He's 23 years old now. So that's very nice. So I have recognized some of you.
Right. Who else knows Peter? Okay, here's another one. Next one. Do you recognize? And if you don't, you can't remember the names, I'm going to tell Mrs. Firmstone.
Oh, Lovell and his wife helped us to organize the tour in 2010. They had the contacts to the Lutheran Church. And that's why I remember Lovell very well. And we too, in the year 2009, the choir conductor came to see where the choir is going to sing. And now we did a sin. Lovell, the choir conductor, and we others, we spoke German with each other. And we were very proud of that.
Yeah, nice to see you, Peter.
Very nice to see you too, Lovell.
Yeah, regards to your
Okay, this is the last one.
I repeat that.
Wait now, wait.
No, I'm long after your time. 1983, lost head prefect. Your mother was dying. John Bidell.
John Bidell. Hello, John.
Hi there.
Yeah. You know, somehow I thought you were very much younger than I am. You are looking fine. No wrinkles in your face and nothing.
Okay. Keep well.
Okay, thanks very much, Peter Uli.
Yes, please.
We'll see you on Saturday.
Please keep on having a good time. One person's name.
Hang on, there's one more here. There's one more here. He used to be a monitor in the A dormitory.
Yes.
That's Emmanuel Clifford. Finished.
Sidney Clifford.
Yes.
It's Sidney.
Yeah. You got Salulu. Yeah.
You're in Cape Town.
No, I'm in Cape Town now, but I'm from the town, Zulu Natal.
Yes, that I remember.
Yeah.
And how are you?
Hello?
And how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. I'm only about 78 years old, that's all. I'm fine. Yeah.
78 years old. And even looking younger than I am looking.
I'm trying to catch up with your mother.
What is your secret formula about looking so
water,
young?
Plenty of water.
Plenty of water.
Purified water. Great to see you, man. Great to see you.
You know who we met yesterday?
Yes.
Jack Bear.
Oh my God, Jack Bear. We're speaking about tonight.
Yeah.
Where is he?
He's at home, actually.
At home, where?
Well, here in Pietermaritzburg.
Oh, Pietermaritzburg, okay. How's our regard?
He says he's living in Eastwood.
Oh, okay. Wherever he's living, yeah. But anyway, pass our regards if you see him.
We share, but I recognized you straight away.
Oh, you did? Okay.
You have a face that I can remember very well.
Okay.
You went to the place, and your wife, Merle, where is she? She's there.
No, that's it.
Hi, Peter.
Enjoy Peter. All right, keep well. All the best. Enjoy the rest of the year, and let 2019 be a great year for you.
Yes, I think so.
And say hello to your mom. Okay.
Thank you.
And Uli, can we not have a word from Uli there?
What do you want to hear?
Say 1, 2, or 3 sentences.
No, it's nice to see you again, you see? It's so long, it's 8 years ago that I saw you last.
Yes.
And you're still looking the same.
Oh, that's great to hear.
So it must be the climate in South Africa, because in Germany you get older and older by days.
Okay.
Yes, now let me just say something from my mom, because we spent lots of time with her today, and she has the problem that sometimes she's fighting fit, and sometimes she's not quite so fit. In addition, sometimes her memory is sort of not playing up with her enough, so sometimes she forgets things, and sometimes she does not forget things. That means the age of 92 is a very great age indeed, and that's why I actually was not ashamed when I went to fetch her to bring her here to us, because here, as you can see, Skype is working. I came in and the nurse straight away said, no go, nothing doing, she's finished. And I went into her bedroom and she was lying on the bed and her eyes were narrow slits. And then I knelt down next to her, held her hands and spoke with her, and after a few minutes the old energy came up again. And then she sat up in bed and looked as though nothing at all had happened in the world, was fighting fit again, had a lovely conversation with me, drank some liquid, then lay down again and was gone. And her biggest worry is about how will I now go from her old age home to the premises where we are staying. And I told her about so I told her about 5 times and said, Mommy, don't worry, it's very good. You know, Pietermaritzburg is very small indeed. And in spite of the fact that the traffic lights were out and all that, because of the stupid load sharing, I can't believe that do this real nonsense. And I was planning in those days, 2010, 29, to solve these problems, but many people, even Quentin advised me that, and I don't know whether he knows it still, but I remember it very well. I would have liked to come to South Africa to solve these electrical problems, but he advised me, rather don't do it, because perhaps there are some people who know that the problems are there, know solutions, but don't want the solutions. And so I pulled myself back and I said, well then I'm staying in Germany and I'll get old in Germany. But what I must say, all of you great people, we miss you very, very, very much indeed. Because the warmth and the heartiness of South Africans, but also the warmth and the heartiness of my mother is so fantastic. It sort of hit us like a wall when we landed in Johannesburg and had the first contact with the people and spent the night in a bed and breakfast. The people are here so different to overseas. They are warm, they are friendly, they help you, they have understanding if you haven't got the right things. Like the telephone was not working, many of our things were not working. Wonderful. Now I tried to pay the full sum today. The man didn't even want it. He said, pay half only. So I've only now paid half for our staying in this bed and breakfast here in Pietermaritzburg. And it's wonderful. It's called Africa's Eden. It's beautiful. Really, right hidden in the hills in Pietermaritzburg. So I wish you a very... Now, my wife is trying to send you photos. I don't know how she wants to do that.
I did. On the phone. On your phone, Winston.
Winston, on your cell phone, there are some pictures from mom.
Okay. Okay, I'll open it.
Yes, it's WhatsApp.
Okay, thanks.
So you can see them.
Yes. Thanks very much, Peter Uli, for really trying. It's a pity we haven't seen Mrs. Firmstone here, but we understand. But however, contrary to what Quentin says, I think now it's time to come back home. Now we need you. When there's a crisis, that's when the leaders stand up. So now's the time for you to come here. Uli will get a job at SARS. They need their IT systems to be abject, and you need to help us to keep this electricity burning. So please.
I'll have to do it.
No, it's a deal. We have to work on it. So thank you very, very much to you.
It was very nice speaking to you. Thank you also very much, and have a very good evening.
Thank you.
Lots of fun. Have a big party.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
We'll make a party in the name of mommy.
Thank you. Thank you. Right then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Gosh.
Da unten. Da.
Okay. No, skip through this quicker now. That's a graduation. Ms. Firmstone, that's a graduation when she did her teacher's training. Remember, prior to that, she did her degree in the years just before that. Let me tell you a short story about the degree. I think she was either in the BA1 or in a final year of BA. She's sitting in this English class, professor of English, teaching them something about Shakespeare. And he was explaining blah, 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 blah. I never liked Shakespeare, these old people with these books I never liked. And he was explaining that. Explain. To the end of the lecture, Mrs. Firmstone puts up her hand. She was like a grandmother in this whole class. And she told that professor, his interpretation of that portion of the book is not quite correct. And she went on to explain it and explain it. He says, you are correct. I've been teaching this all the time and I thought this was the interpretation. He says, but how do you know that? You know, I'm an English teacher at school. And that's a story at the degree. You remember in what year was it? When I did a motivation to the Office of the President for her to get a presidential award. That was the award that she received in Pretoria, the Order of Baobab Bronze. And I made contact with some pupils in Pretoria because they'd flown her up and everything. I think in 2 days they arranged a gathering for on the evening. On that evening, I think there was over 100 people who came together, and they had a party. Like just in 2 days, they tried to put it together and to celebrate her award. Let me tell you the political story. Here, there were all the awardees sitting in the hall. Former President Zuma was handing it out. Her name was called up. She went up. President Zuma thought she was a white lady. So he congratulates her and all that. And she turns around to him, starts talking to him in Zulu. Fluent Zulu. He was shocked. He went white. And then she spoke afterwards. He came to talk to her and he said, at that time, while she was at the home, she used to tutor students at the University of Natal Pietermaritzburg campus in Zulu. They were doing Zulu as a subject, and she used to tutor. They used to come to her. She said, but where do you know? My friend told me about this. She used to tutor them. I said, Miss Firmstone, you should be rich by now. She said, I don't charge you. Right? That was the certificate, and of course she got a medal from the Pope. That was in, if you can read Latin.
2009?
Fernandez, you ever taught Latin at school?
I can't remember.
No, 2009 was when I was
2011?
Minus 11, I think it was.
Yeah,
11, yeah.
Whatever. So she received that certificate from the Pope and many other awards as well. That's the medal she received from the Pope of that time. You remember this truck? Yes. The soccer team there was no bus. They traveled to all over in this truck. Let us just give us a few pictures of the extramural activities that took place at the school. Speech and drama, everything. 1991, she got from the Pope. That's a picture. That's an old picture that I got hold of from Mrs. Firmstone. It's a soccer team.
And he played
Charlie Kraft.
And he played in the back.
Yeah?
Emmanuel played back.
Charlie Kraft was
Peter
Lally too. Check out Peter Lally.
What did you say?
This is in the 60s.
Okay. That's Sister Stephanie. Sister Stephanie was like the pilot of the ship, working in the background as the secretary of the school, keeping everything together. I mean, when the inspectors used to walk there, all the books they wanted were there, ready for her. It's not a question of the night previously teachers were scouting to get the Nemo book and this book together. Everything was there all the time. I do put this picture in too. Just look at it. Look at the style of dresses. Needlework and dressmaking class, 1974. And I put several staff photos in of the years I could get, because while a lot of the focus was on the pupils, I think there would be no pupils if there weren't staff. You see in 61, it was predominantly the nuns.
Freddie use a boxing.
There you see there's Mr. Ferguson there.
Right there, the knuckles or use.
Prefects of 1973.
Remember? Yes. In the attic.
There you.
Where you? In prefect.
Where?
Show us.
Right on the top.
No.
Right.
At the bottom.
Left. Up. And that's 1983. That's 1983, not 73. 83.
Apologies. This you remember Saturday morning in the garden. Those who are selected to go work in the garden. Little Flower produced their own vegetables for the hostels. They were self-reliant in terms of vegetables.
So that's where organic farming starts.
Yes, and you ask Mr. Firmstone, he's a master. Remember, he was a farmer. The chapel, that is where you used to go to at 4:30 in the morning. Remember that chapel? Now, if you look at the chapel, depends on which group. It's either the boys came first or the girls came first. So you'd be sitting there and saying the rosary and that. And then when if the girls were in there and the boys started walking, you see everybody looking there. Or vice versa, looking, either selecting, viewing, who's my next girlfriend or who could I marry one day.
We still can't stop there, man. Check that ankles. That's how we used to rate it.
Start from 1956. That's an old photo. You see predominantly nuns.
One of teachers,
Sister Hildegard.
Geography teacher.
That's a boys' hostel. It was, if it was just being built or it was established already. You remember if you walk down there, then you walk to the bathroom. Yeah, first cottage on the left side.
This is Mrs. Firmson's posing. Oh, Dennis bigger.
The swimming pool. Now, this is a picture of the pool when it was completed. You would have seen pictures on Facebook of the pool as it looks now. It's a garbage site. And you know, pupils who've been there, you know, going to reflect in the school. When they see the condition of the pool now, it brings tears to their eyes. It's neglected, it's empty, it's not used. Remember the hostel closed many years ago. And they changed the boys' hostel into the primary school, and the top school was remained as the high school. Some people say, don't go and have a look at it, it'll break your heart. It's a day school now. Of course, I put this picture in because those are the people in the engine room, the maintenance staff, ironing, kitchen. You can see those big steel pots, and they shone like new steel. They would shine. That's the first enrollment in 1923 at the school. And I think I got it out of the magazine that they said, can you search for your mother or father? Or great-grandfather. So hopefully some of the readers will recognize themselves, hopefully. Mr. Green Thompson. Mr. Green Thompson is in Maritzburg too. It's a sad story. He's serious into Alzheimer's. He can't recognize anybody here. Maybe only his wife at this stage. But
Austin Green Thompson.
yeah. But I remember biology teachers teach us biology without elaborate laboratory. And when you finish, you'll know what went on in that experiment. And agriculture. Sister Tom taught agriculture.
What year was that?
You find the year in the book. You find the year in the book. The Marais family, I put this in because it's just to show that there was generations of kids who came to Little Flower. The eldest went, oftentimes the second, the third, the fourth continued into the school. This is the Marais family. From Le Truc, where it started, to Little Flower School, girls' hostel, and the quad of the girls' hostel. This brings us to the back cover of the book. I think let's look at, I'm going to read that part there. That's a quote from one of the stories of the pupils. What Little Flower taught us became our inalienable support for life. We were taught how to learn, read, and do, and stepped out with confidence and humility. Education is a precious gift no one can take from us. Somebody said in Zimbabwe, when they got their freedom in 1980, Mugabe and the years thereafter hated the English. And if you read his book, you'll find out why he hates the English with a passion of what they did to him. However, in the reforms in the country, they chased out the white farmers, they took their farms away and all that. There's one thing they kept, was their educational system, the British educational system. Okay. And those who are at university can see the Zimbabweans, when they don't get B's, they almost fall into depression. For them, the minimum is A for their work. I mean, they perform academically way above the average South African pupils. And that is the back cover of the back outside cover of the book. And guys, that is the short story of the book. The book is available. Yeah, I brought some copies, 225 Rand per copy, but I just want to show you, as a vote of thanks, I just want to play another clip from Eileen.
Thank you. Over the world, thank you is said millions of times a day. I asked myself whether it is possible to convey the depth of my heartfelt gratitude for this unique accomplishment in these two little words. In this thank you are admiration for all who endeavored on this adventure and joy that we made it together. Everybody involved has made the book possible. But we would not be holding it in our hands had Margaret Heslop and Roanne Fetter, by a very generous donation, enabled us to employ an editor, Llewellyn Jengels, who, to our fortune, took on the job. Many thanks to you all. Before the editor could get to work, he had to be found and convinced that he was about to handle something special. Winston Middleton, you searched for and found Llewellyn. You were the one who took over the organization of getting things together, when my mother and I thought that, due to illnesses in the team working on the book, all efforts had been in vain. Your enormous energy, your dedication and loyalty are par excellence. Wonderful work done. How do I thank you? We are honored and grateful that you, Professor Jansen, agreed to do the foreword. In the sphere of education, we could not have won a better figure of vision, stalwartness, and brilliance. Many, many thanks. The book had to be printed, and Peter Finn stepped in with his generous donation. Thank you very much. Also to the Fingerprint Cooperative of Cape Town. My gratitude also goes back to those in the past. The founders, the builders, the teachers and principals of Little Flower School. They enabled the education without which we would not be here today celebrating. To all the submitters of intriguing, fascinating and authentic accounts of life at LFS, thank you very, very much. Without your stories, there would be no book, printed or not. Your belief in this venture was a constant source of energy. Carol Smith, your calm and efficient help after manuscripts had been stolen. Your typing the huge batch given to you prevented some nervous breakdowns. Thank you very, very much. There are those in Germany I would like to thank as well. You supported me through your interest and morally because you believe in education, in working to make society better. Ulrike Frehn, Heinz-Jürgen Küpper, Gudrun Bedenk-Viebahn, Ingrid Hacker-Seehaus, Father Adalbert Balling. Thank you very much. Dear co-authors, Bernard Matthey and Edmund de Broys, a big thank you. You were involved in the many, many hours of brainstorming, in the overcoming of doubt, in deciding to go on, in the moments of elation. Together we made it. And now to you, my mother, it is no exaggeration to say that actually without you, there would not even have been an idea of this book, let alone the complete book. You are the key point, the heart and soul, the mind behind most matters concerning Little Flower School. In your case, saying a simple thank you seems so little, but it is an all-encompassing thank you. Thank you. Eileen Küpper-Firmstone, Germany, November 2018.
Beautiful. Wow.
And so we have it. Thank you for coming. Thank you to Princeton and Mo for opening up your home for us to come together, seeing one another, reflecting on this, to actually have a pre-launch of the actual launch. I had hoped that the launch would take place in Pietermaritzburg, the first launch, but because we were pushing, at a certain point we were pushing for time and go to the printer and back, and that we missed the deadline in November. But we set them launch in Maritzburg for the 15th of December. I know it's way halfway into December, but we try to extend the invitation to all and sundry. But I thought, we can't wait till next year to have it. Let's try and put it together. And Quentin, he said, let's try and do it. So let's regard this as the pre-launch, and the big launch will take place in Pietermaritzburg. We expect about 40 past peoples to be there. And Mrs. Firmson will be the Lady of Honor. Every time I call her, she says, now when is this launch? I said, no, Mrs. Firmson, the 16th of December. What day is it? Saturday. Oh, okay. Mrs. Firmson, have you got your speech? Yes, I've got the speech. So I don't think, and the reason why we chose Matt is because she's there. I think the majority do stay in Johannesburg, and I thought she wouldn't be able to travel up there, so we decided to have Maritzburg as the main launch. In Johannesburg, we'll have the launch in February. We said, now ask the people there, said, February, people that have got the book by then, they said, ma'am, any reason to bring LFS pupils together, they will come. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming. The book is available there.
Let me thank you two, Winston, for this initiative that you took. It's not the first time that you have been acting on behalf of all of us for Little Flower School. You did so with inaugurating the initiative for the award of the Order of the Baobab. And now with the book, I know it has kept you busy. For those of you who don't know Winston, he runs a very busy office at the university, and how he finds time to do these things quite alone. But thank you so much indeed for this effort. I wish you well in other launches that you're going to have, and good luck. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lava.
Thank you.
Winston, can I just suggest you know, can I get legends of LFS like this under one roof so easily that they can sign some of the books, man. And just give them.
Yes.
You mean sign one another's book?
We have pens.
Yes. I would like.
Or we can all sign. We should take a book.
Because
You sign each other money down?
Yes.
That would be nice.
Well, to pay.
It's like getting an autograph
You
you can sign.
Well, I think pay, you get your book and you go ask,
Yes,
please
yes.
please sign for me.
Well done, well done. Good decision. All right, okay. Is there, you're going to use the register, maybe you use the registers to mark pays.
But Dominic will handle that aspect. She's got the petty cash there.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, Silver? She's got a pen there, you can ask everybody else.
Yes.
I'll issue a complimentary copy of the book for all your hard work. Mrs. Ferguson said I should give it to you personally, so this is evidence that I have actually given it to you. So I'll show her the video and say that you've given it. Thanks very much.